Quite often here on the channel, we're talking about things like residency and citizenship, and we talk a lot about how people are sold on the concept of residency as something, permanent residency especially, as something that they want to get abroad, sometimes in multiple countries, because it provides them protection. There's a huge industry of people who run scams trying to sell the idea of getting residency in different countries, and we see this all over the place. Tons of YouTube channels, happens to be where I see it, but there's lots of other places, a lot of websites and on Twitter or whatever, Facebook groups where people are promoting services to try to sell you on the idea of and a process that of course you pay for, or services or resources on how to get residency in different places so that you have this protection should you decide to move in the future. Of course, if you're living in a place, that's different. This is a very specific discussion that I want to have about this concept of having residency for protection. And what comes up recently in the news is that the United States has begun to deny green card holders the ability to return to the country without there being any action that would denote that they're no longer eligible for that residency. Meaning, under normal circumstances, a green card, for those who don't know, in the United States is a slang term for the identification card, which is generally green and gives permanent residency to someone living in the United States. It is the step that you get before attempting to get citizenship. So basically anyone who wants to have American citizenship who is not born there will go through a process. They want to get to the green card. The idea is once they've obtained the green card, they are a permanent resident. They are no longer under fear of having to leave the United States. They are completely protected. They have basically all the rights and privileges of being an American. You can certainly work and do anything like that. You can own things, which a lot of you can do without, but this gives you a permanence. It is considered this gold standard or green standard, as the case may be, of having this permanence and this protection, this safety living in the United States. Now, of course, becoming a citizen does take it a step farther. Becoming a citizen is a goal for many people. Getting citizenship, unlike permanent residency, is something you can pass on to children that you have after you are a citizen, of course. And of course, as a citizen, you then gain rights like voting, for example, that a resident is assumed to not be able to have, and certainly in the United States does not have. So this is something that people often try to achieve in other countries. And if you're an American looking at moving abroad, living abroad, often will refer to or think, at least mentally, about getting a green card. Now, here in Nicaragua, that card is not green, or it's possible that it is. I am colorblind, so my wife would actually make fun of me. There's about a 50% chance that the card is green here, and I just didn't realize it. But we call it the cedula, and it does have the possibility of being denoted as permanent resident. So, and conceptually, I am a green card holder here in Nicaragua. That means in theory there is no reasonable possibility that I cannot stay for forever. I have the ability to cross the border indefinitely. I have the capability to do anything in the country short of voting and short of passing this on automatically to my children. Now, of course, if you are a green card holder here, under normal circumstances, your children will get it as well. But when they become adults, they have to do it on their own. So it's not something I can pass on as a legacy. It's just something that happens at a family level when you have dependent children. Generally, that's assumed. Okay. But what a lot of people are told is that they want to come get these things, and often they're told to get them before they live in a place. And this is something that I think is very, very misleading. There are countries, Mexico being a prime one, being such a popular country, such a large country, such a well-known country. Many people look at Mexico, and Mexico offers the ability to file for and obtain different types of residency from abroad without ever setting foot in the country. This is good for a number of reasons. You could be living somewhere and working, decide Mexico is a place you want to go in the future. Of course, Mexico is a big tourist destination, so lots of people are familiar with it already. And so you may have been to Mexico a number of times in your life and say, you know what, I really want to move to Mexico, but I don't want to move and then go through this process and then be denied or something. So I want to apply ahead of time, make sure I have this paperwork, and then they'll give you a window, right? Your residency is good for the next 2 years. Anytime in that 2 years, you can show up in country and you just stay because you have residency. You may have to renew it, you may have to show some things, whatever, but you have this residency before you move. And because Mexico is so big and so popular and so well known, many people picture that this is a standard process, but Mexico is actually really unique in this. Not good or bad, just very unique. And so you need to be aware that when looking at Mexico, it is not indicative of most of the world, and it is not the only way that you can work with Mexico, but it is a very popular thing and very well known. So because of this, many people have gone out to make a quick buck off of people who fear that maybe the world is falling apart, fear that maybe they need some stability, and this is a way to perceive that they're getting some, and they sell them services to help them get this residency in Mexico for people who don't live there. Now, if you live there, it's a different story. You probably need residency. It makes sense. And people who are giving you services for that may be completely legit. But people who are pushing this idea of protect yourself by getting this residency ahead of time, it is a trick. We've known it's been a trick all along. Nothing has changed. This is a scam. Now, same thing happens around the world. Because of Mexico doing that, people have this mentality. Scammers can show, well, Mexico does this. That's how the world works. No, that is generally not how the world works. But here in Nicaragua, we get an after effect of this. So I talk to people quite often who say, well, I was told by someone who makes money by scamming you, of course, that I should have residency before I move, that I need this residency, that this residency protects me. And it's all these layers of misinformation. So here in Nicaragua, like most of the world, you do not have a benefit or any logic to looking into or applying for residency before you live here. You want to be living here first. It's going to make the process easier. In many cases, it is a requirement. And most importantly, what we have been saying for years is that having residency does not provide protection. Living in a country does provide protection. For me, I live in Nicaragua. I'm a full-time liver in Nicaragua, if that is a term. Yes, I'm a full-time resident. That is a legal structure here in Nicaragua. It doesn't exist outside the country. Inside the country, I am perceived as a full-time legal resident. I have the paperwork. I have been checked up on. I do, right? Like that's, and I'm physically here. But I could leave the country and live abroad and not give up that residency. Eventually, it would no longer be valid. Nicaragua does not allow you to maintain that residency if you don't live here, but it's residency. You can give it up, live abroad for a while, come back and apply again. No harm, no foul. They understand people want to move in and out. They understand that people need to move for work and all that. That's not betrayal of the country or anything. It's just part of the residency process in life. Not talking about citizenship or anything like that. This is a thing that is relatively ephemeral. If you have that residency and you live in, let's say, Spain, or you are like me and you're living here in Nicaragua, if there was things that people worry about, right? World War III, zombie outbreak, a major pandemic, I, living here full time, am going to be very, very safe. The chances that Nicaragua is going to ask me to leave based on some external event and just wanting to kick out all the people who live here is extremely low, but possible and within their rights. If Nicaragua was to ask me to do that, to ask me to leave, chances are they would have closed the borders to other people coming in long before that. They're not going to start by kicking out people who are fully legal and here. They're going to start by not allowing new people to become legal. They're simply going to stop the process of permitting new people. Then they will stop the process of people who would be otherwise legal but are outside the country. People who want to return and they say, you know what, we've decided we're not letting you return. Then if that didn't do whatever effect that they needed, then they would turn to the people who are living here legally and say, okay, we're going to ask you to leave. We're no longer going to maintain your legal status, which is within their rights. Not expected, not normal, but totally within their rights as a government. So the same thing in the United States. Right now we're seeing people who are fully legal, have their green card, no issues whatsoever. They've traveled for vacation or for work just temporarily, and when they return, find out that their residency is not going to be honored. That permanent residency that's supposed to be that theoretical, absolute assurance that you have no worries, no risks of being able to re-enter a country and to be able to stay in a country the United States is no longer honoring. Now, this discussion isn't about Nicaragua or the United States. They're just examples. What's really important here is conceptually, people have been sold this lie that having residency means that the country cannot revoke it and cannot refuse to honor it. But those are lies. Every country that gives out residency retains the power to simply revoke it anytime that they want, or to simply allow you to keep it, but say they're not going to honor it. They don't have to allow you back over the border. They don't have to allow you to stay. Now, maybe their internal laws make that more or less difficult for them to action. The United States has very few protections. If they stop you at the border, you have no rights, period, end of story. The constitutional law doesn't apply to the border and so forth. So the U.S. is a jurisdiction where protections are essentially non-existent. They work on customs, the customary behaviors for their legal protections rather than strict legal code. Other countries have a strict legal code that they need to follow, but that legal code can be interpreted, that legal code can be changed, that legal code can be have allowances for these things, right? So any country always has this power. So the idea, for example, for those people who are getting Mexican residency before moving to Mexico, the thing that we have always said is that if Mexico changed their minds, you already have that residency, but Mexico has changed their mind. Oh, there's a zombie apocalypse. We don't want to let new people in. You're not going to be able to go to this border with all these people holding back the zombies and say, wait, no, I have permanent residency. I've never been to Mexico, but I've got this card. You have to let me in. They're going to laugh at you, right? They have zero responsibility to honor that. Even if you're living in the country, they still have no requirement that they can't just kick you out. So we've been using this as a theoretical. If something was to happen, if some major world event, pandemic, zombie apocalypse, World War III, was to happen, that countries would evaluate people who have that paperwork or in the process of that paperwork are inside or outside of the country, and they would reconsider if they were going to honor those things in the way that they did when nothing was going wrong. Every country in the world will do this when they're impacted in this way. Right now, the United States is being impacted in this way. The United States is operating like a country at war with itself. It is in the throes of disorganization, if nothing else. And in doing so, we are seeing that a major country who is very, very visible and willing to set itself up on the world stage with high, very damaging optics to cripple its tourism industry, to flag it as no longer a viable player on the world stage. And they're completely willing to allow that high visibility issue with not honoring permanent residency to happen. So it's a great example of how little it can take for countries to suddenly decide that that process is not a super reliable one that you can just count on. And what is the point of all this? The point of this is that too many people have been sold the lie that by getting residency, especially residency that they are not actively using, meaning residency before they've moved to a country or residency in case they need to move to a country, is complete BS. If the thing you're trying to protect against is maybe I'm going to lose my job in Canada and I want to have residency in Panama so that I'm able to quickly say, you know what, I lost my job, let's go to Panama, I'll get a job there. Okay, if you're trying to protect against personal changes in life, then having residency lined up, absolutely fine, it may make a lot of sense. But if you're trying to do the thing that most people are doing, which is a plan B scenario where you're trying to protect against war, famine, whatever, pestilence, and zombies, if that's what you're trying to protect against, those residencies that you get for a place you're not living in have literally zero value. Because if you were going to be allowed into Mexico, Nicaragua, it doesn't matter, name the place, if they want you, they're going to let you in and let you apply for residency once you're there in 99% of the cases. And in the super rare ones, you're going to go somewhere as a tourist and apply from abroad, and then you have the applied ahead of time thing. There's ways to work around this. There's no value to applying ahead of time, to paying and doing all these things ahead of time. If you are going to be kicked out or not allowed in, whether you did all this work ahead of time or not is going to have no variance. It's not going to affect anything. You are going to be stuck either way without being able to get in. And the person who's put in the time and effort and believed they had this protection is going to be mentally and financially impacted much more than the person who waited to find out reality and didn't spend time or money ahead of time or have this mental picture that they were magically protected by something that was just fairy dust at the end of the day. Before we get on to our final anecdote about this, I just want to do a little housekeeping. I want to thank everyone for watching the show. We do have a GoFundMe for my producer, Marcela, who has stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and all the details are down in the show notes. Just go to the GoFundMe link and there's a video that explains where she is and what's going on. You can see how much we've raised. We're doing great with that. Thank you so much to the community. Every Thursday, we try to have a live stream. We'd love to have you guys on in the evenings. It's a lot of fun and a great time to ask questions in real time. If you want to contact me or get on social media or anything, check the show notes. Everything you could possibly imagine is in the show notes. Go look at that. Drop into the comments and say hi. Send in a video question, please, please, please. We love it when people do that. And consider sponsoring us with Buy Me a Coffee, because it does take a lot of time and energy and money and equipment to do this show. And we really appreciate everyone who helps sponsor the show and make this possible. Everything's in the show notes. Okay, my final anecdote. I was talking to someone relatively recently, and he had been sold on this idea of getting this residency somewhere that they weren't sure where they were going to be moving, and they were sold on the idea that they had to fly into this country multiple times, they had to do all this work, And at the end of the day, I said, okay, so wait, you've spent $5,000, many weeks of your time over a period of years. You've accumulated probably tens of thousands of dollars of total investment into this program to eventually have the right to long-term residency in said country. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, why? What is your end goal? He's like, well, what if I need to move there? I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Right now, today, in a country I've never stepped foot in once, and he's been in quite a bit and spent a ton of money in with one of these people who sells these services for relocation. If today both he and I decided to move to this country, we would be equal in moving into that country. Literally equal. Both of us could catch a flight to that country today. I, having never been there, never put in a penny, never done any research, could show up, grab an Airbnb, call up a local lawyer, and go through the process of getting residency, and I would be permanently in the country from the moment I set foot in. I never have to leave while doing that residency, and I'm very confident that my residency would be approved. I've been approved other places. I don't have any black marks on my record. There's no reason why they wouldn't accept me. Given that I have independent income and all that stuff. I'm aware of their processes in that country and their limits and all those things. It would not be any problem at all. Of course, it's their decision, but realistically, there's nothing that would bar me from moving into that country. For him, yes, he's already done a bunch of the legwork and spent a bunch of the money, but most of that money wasn't needed. Most of that money went into flights and Airbnbs that are completely unnecessary for him, all because we're both going to step into that country on the same day and live there full time on the same day. My paperwork will say tourist longer, we assume, than his will say tourist, but the actual impact to our lives is negligible or non-existent. Both of us can show up, say October 1st, we both set foot into the country. I as a tourist, he as a permanent resident. Both of us can rent homes, apartments, buy houses, buy a car, do whatever we need starting on day one. Both of us can live our lives in that country equally starting on the same day. I do need to go through a small amount of paperwork to get my residency, which he may already have. But his may have timed out, his may have been fake, his may have cost him a ton more. I would only need to spend maybe $1,000 to get my residency. He has already spent in excess of probably $20,000 to get his residency. But his residency, having it ahead of time, has done nothing to benefit his life. However, in this case, yes, he's wasted time and $20,000, $19,000, but in the end, at least our results are the same. But what if he decides not to move to that country? Well, he's invested $20,000 in something he may not ever use. I've invested nothing. Let's say we both move to a different country, one that he's never researched and I've never researched. We show up there and we're also equal, except he's wasted $20,000 and a whole bunch of time on a country he decided was not the one for him, and I've never invested anything there. I'm now $20,000 ahead, and in both cases, our lives are equal. In both cases, he spent a lot of time and money that doesn't benefit him. And this is where these residency scams are so powerful, is it feels so valuable to have done this thing. Even in this conversation where I kept asking, so what did you get for this money? He kept being like, well, I guess nothing. I'm like, why are you continuing the process? Why are you flying down there in a few weeks? Why? And at no point could he answer any benefit to this extremely expensive process he was doing. He had been sold on the idea, but the idea had nothing behind it. And even once explaining it, he was like, but I must have to do it. I'm like, no, it has we just showed mathematically. It has nothing. It gives you no protections that I don't have. It gives you no faster access that I don't have. It doesn't give you any benefits. It doesn't make anything easier. It only makes things harder. It only makes things take longer. It only makes things more expensive. And it adds this incredibly huge risk that you may not choose that country as your permanent option. He's never stayed there long enough to know if it's a place he wants to stay in permanently, so he hasn't even done that process. So if we were to go there today together, he would have a few weeks of jump on me, but the process of deciding if it's a country we wanted to live in long term would basically start from the same starting point, and all of that work he did would be at risk until he decided that was the country he did want to be in, and then it's still just a big waste. The mentality, the emotional plea that people make about residency. The word seems so meaningful. The idea of not having residency seems so fearful, but these are completely myths. These are things that predators use to emotionally ply us into panicking and spending time and money for services that often are actually to our detriment rather than to our benefit. So I want people to evaluate this, but in light of these new changes in the United States, these new actions that are taking place, it highlights that even in the largest, richest, most high visibility countries, these things are not guarantees. These things are not protections. You could go to the United States as a tourist today and have basically equal opportunity to enter the country as a green card holder. Both have a very high chance of being denied. Both have every possibility of being allowed. That's something that people with green cards think they have this deep protection. Normally, not everyone. Many people with those permanent residency cards in any country think that they're carrying some deep, deep protection. And in reality, they're carrying a convenience, and maybe it's a step towards something more valuable, something that's truly a different layer, like citizenship. But until you get to that citizenship layer, you're really looking at a very ephemeral product that does not provide what emotionally it seems likely to provide. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. We talked about how you can support the channel. You can buy me a coffee. You can go support our GoFundMe for Marcela. Share this on social media. Tell someone about the show. Watch another episode. All those things do a ton to help us. Get in the comments and say hello, and I will see all of you tomorrow.